Go.
Hello, Tom.
Hi, Simon.
How are you today?
Great, thank you.
Excellent. Excellent. Why are we talking today, Tom?
Well, I think we'd like to sort of explore what we know and what we don't know, don't we?
Okay, yeah, exactly. I think so. But it's also I wanted to talk today because I've just read your wonderful little book, your shilling shocker. This called This We Know.
Oh, I like that.
Yeah, and being a writer myself, I appreciated a lot about what it communicates about life and also the way it does it. It's very clever. It sort of keeps up with you without realizing it, and you think you're just sitting down for a sort of a tea and a cup of tea and a chat, and then it sort of whacks you round the head with some wonderful insights and philosophy about life, just different ways of looking at things.
Hmm.
So you've done a really clever and subtle and because of that, quite a brilliant thing. That little piece of writing. And what was it? What was it like to write it? Actually,
Well, what you just described for the reader was the same thing for me because it just crept up on me. So I didn't plan to write it in the first place. So it wasn't on my list of things on my project list last year. I'd already written last year's book. I was actually on holiday, and all before I knew it, this book started downloading, and I call it downloading because I had no plan for the book. Normally, I have a mind map and I know exactly where I'm going, and I've got the structure of the book mapped out. And this thing just flew in, and every morning, instead of what I normally do on holidays, read in the morning, then you go out and do holiday things in the afternoon. Instead of reading on this holiday, and I took a copy of the book I had written to kind of proofread, in that quiet space. That didn't even get a look in. Instead of reading every morning, I was just writing on my iPad, and this whole book came in less than 2 weeks. But it was almost like it was being read to me. And in the same way it crept up on you as a reader, it crept up on me as a writer. And I had
yeah,
no idea where I was going with it. And I had no idea that it was going to come to that lovely conclusion, which is all we need to do now to have a world that we want to live in 100 years from now is to start thinking differently, and that world will just emerge.
right. Yeah, it's the quality of our thought.
Yeah.
Of our thought. Well, I think that's one of the things because the chapters themselves, they're so they're so fully formed. Each chapter we're talking about 2 or 3 pages,
Yeah.
and it's all very sort of broadly set. So it's very. I mean, I think you said yourself you could read it in a long train journey,
Yes.
or sort of, you could read it in an hour, but I think you might miss. Yeah, it's not one that you want to rush through necessarily. But each chapter's like a little drop of thought,
Hmm.
and it sort of opens with something, and then closes with something, and in the middle there's just you sort of had room to move about. But
Hmm.
it's all thought. It's all the same sort of thought. If you know what I mean. Is that vague? Is that
Well, it was vague because it's written in hypnotic language. The entrancement that you end up in is actually the entrancement that I was in when I wrote it. I was in this sort of semi trance state. I always meditate before I write anything anyway, and I kind of just wanted to take my mind in a different direction. And it's one of like any book that you write, you never know if anyone's going to quite like it when you're writing it. But I did feel the quality of the writing was different, and I felt it was quite magical because, as I said, I didn't really plan to write it. I had no idea of the direction at all, but it just started from the one meme. This idea of a meme where you have I wonder what, and I saw my lovely other partner. She was sleeping on the my lovely partner was sleeping on the sofa, and I just thought, hang on, how many people are actually asleep right now?
mm,
How many people on the planet? We've got 7 billion people on the planet. And I did some maths, and I said, well, if everyone sleeps for 7 hours a day on average, then if you get 7 billion times 7 divided by 24, about 2 billion people are actually asleep right now.
yeah?
And then I did some more research on the internet. I said, well, what sort of time do you dream for when you're asleep? So apparently 50% of your sleep time is dream. So that I went, hang on, that means that 1 billion people right now are actually in a dream.
Yeah.
And then you think, well, actually, And the way I'm saying it is the way that my thought process went and the way that the writing went. And I think I wrote chapter 3 first, which was about this dream state, and then I sort of backfilled chapter 1 and 2 and then went on from there. But then I thought, well, hang on, if 5 billion people are awake right now, what level of awakeness are they actually in? You know, many people are just commuting to work. They've got the pressures of life, as we call it, on them. They just go about things the same way day in, day out. And if you go about the same things in the same way every day, and you think the same things every day, then the same results will come from it. And I guess it's just a rambling and an exploration of that.
Yeah. I like. It's actually. Do you know? I was reading Albert Camus today, and I love the way he writes. And it's also like Milan Kundera, where it's like they just want to say, just come with me.
Yeah.
We're just going to go on a little journey.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, don't want to put people off. Your book is nothing like Albert Camus, but in the sense that you're inviting people just to come on another journey. Is that you may not have had this thought, but if I'm just going to, let's just enjoy it together and see where it takes us.
Yeah.
I think it's that conversational quality that it makes it hugely enjoyable. And sort of, yeah, it's like being taken along for a little thing. I've got one question, Tom, for you, and that's about, you do work with having inspiration on demand.
Mm-hmm.
So if there's a project or something you need to work on, how can you access a creative ability to apply thought? But at the same time, this book it crept up. And to what extent this book and the others do you think that it was intended by you to be written? I mean, for the other books, has it been much more your idea that you would write a book and then the ideas came? Or is it more your impression that books sort of happen upon you?
Yeah, I don't think any of my books, in fact my first book was a book of poetry, 100 Years of Hermitude, and I definitely didn't plan to write that either, that just popped in. And I've got to say that each of the books, the timing of the books has taken me on a journey to where I am now, that had I imagined that journey was going to unfold, the fear of where I might end up might have stopped any of the books coming out. So the answer to your question is, some of them were planned in terms of the book and what the book was about, but none of them were planned in terms of where they've unfolded. And latterly, so the first 2 books I wrote consciously, Blocks and the Lightbulb Moment book, I planned to write them. I wanted a book that focused on writer's block and helped with writer's block, and I wanted a book that focused on ideas and where ideas come from and how you can make sure the good ideas don't get away. But the books since then, the Flavours of Thought book, the book Planes of Being, and the book This We Know, the 2 books I'm writing this year are completely not planned, and they're just flowing in. You know, I've got an idea of what they're about, but I haven't got too much idea of what the content is and the flow. Yeah. And I'm also I'm not too worried about when they come in. So at the moment, I'm not actually writing at the moment because I'm working on a slightly different project, and I'm really comfortable that now is not the time to write.
Yeah.
And I tend to write my main opuses in spring, you know, like springing forward. So I count this time as research time, and I know roughly, I've got the book titles, I know roughly the content, but I don't know where they're going to end up, if you know what I mean. And it's almost like the books are being read out to me, and like many writers, you know, I learn as much as the reader from writing the book.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, I've had a very jolly time reading it, and it really has. I mean, it's not just enjoyable. I mean, there really is a core there, which I describe as psychoactive.
Yes.
But it's not sort of something that needs to be endured. It's not something you have to work for. It's just going on a little journey. But I think that journey is actually quite deep and it is quite profound. So I wanted to have this conversation to thank you for that. And,
Thank you.
And hopefully, if a few more people get to read your book as a result of it, then I think that's a nice little trend that's going on.
Lovely, thank you. Much appreciated. It's always great to get feedback from readers. You know, I would say reviews are the lifeblood for us authors, even if they're not so good ones, because we can only improve by listening to what people say and taking that feedback on it, and also just as encourages us to write more stuff, isn't it?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. All right, so well, all the best.
Thank you so much, Simon, and keep reading and keep writing.
Thank you very much.
Happy scribing.